Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. We're going to start with Senator Benson, 467. Got 10 bills today. We're likely to do them in the order that you've seen. Go ahead, Senator Benson. You're welcome to start.
Good morning, Senator.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. You sit right here.
Whenever you're ready, Senator.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I think, Mr. Chairman, the first thing that we need to do is we need to thank the people that are behind me for coming here this afternoon in this weather. That says to us that they have a genuine and deep commitment to ensuring that the best happens for the citizens of the great state of Maryland. So I want to thank them on behalf, I want to thank you all on behalf of this wonderful committee for coming down in this weather to show your love and support for helping to raise the bar for a better, great state of Maryland long after we are gone. So it's just a pleasure to be here to make those remarks. I sit before you today to express the importance of the Forestry Education Fund. The Maryland Forestry Education Fund was established to bolster the Maryland Forestry Foundation's efforts in providing education and resources to forest landowners, enhancing the capabilities of district forestry boards, and increasing the knowledge of local governments to achieve healthy and sustainable forests. The fund also supports businesses in testing innovative best management practices in forestry. Some of the key points are as follows. Forest education helps people understand forest's critical role in our ecosystem. It highlights the importance of conservation, biodiversity, and the impact of deforestation. Educating communities about sustainable forestry practices can lead to better management and use of forest resources, ensuring that they are available for future generations. Forests act as carbon sinks, absorbing from the atmosphere. Education can promote actions that protect and expand these vital areas, contributing to climate change mitigation efforts. Many communities rely on forests for their livelihoods. Education can provide knowledge on how to sustainably harvest resources without depleting them, thus supporting long-term economic stability. Nonetheless, some people ask why forestry education is important. Here, the Maryland Forestry Education Fund is critical for several reasons. Forests play a vital role in maintaining ecological balance. Proper education and resources help forest landowners manage their lands sustainably, ensuring the forests continue to provide environmental, economic, and social benefits. The fund enhances the capabilities of district forestry boards and local governments, equipping them with the knowledge to make informed decisions about forest conservation and management. I could go on and on. You all have the testimony before you, and I'm sure that you all do not want me to continue reading all the stuff that that is contained in this testimony. But in the following analysis, I'm going to ask that you all please support this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 467. We have a number of people who are here this afternoon to testify in full support of this wonderful piece of legislation. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my great friend, Mr. Gary Al, who has just been a staunch supporter and defender of not only forests, but he has just been a godsend for Prince George's County, and he is from Bowie, Maryland, and at one point in time was a mayor in Bowie, and we're just very, very proud and pleased to have him here this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as Senator just pointed out, my name is Gary Allen. I'm the president of the Maryland Forestry Foundation. And first of all, I'd like to add my voice to the thanks of both those who are present behind me, but most particularly to the senator sitting beside me for her leadership in bringing this bill forward. It's a pleasure to work with her. It's always been a pleasure to know her, and it's been a pleasure for the length of service that she's had for our county and our area. It's been an enjoyable relationship we've had for many, many years. I want to call your attention not to the details of my testimony, which I'll summarize in just a second, but to a letter that's attached to it for those of you who take a look at it. That letter is from one of Maryland's last state foresters, Mr. Don Van Hassen, under the Hogan administration. He retired. The Hogan administration went on to appoint not one, but 3 different successive acting foresters. And it's only with the election of Mr. Westmore that we actually finally got a permanent state forester. But what we've recognized is that the flow of the changes that are going on in the state and among forest ownership in Maryland is that Maryland's landowners need a better education about why they ought to support Maryland's forest resources. This bill is an extension of our capacity to build that understanding, both in cooperation with Maryland's forestry boards, which have been in existence now for over 80 years. We have 250 volunteers. We have a panel in every county in Maryland that provides outreach to private forest landowners. And recall, private forest landowners own 70% plus of the forest resources in Maryland. This bill helps strengthen our capacity to serve the boards and to serve both urban and rural landowners in helping to understand the value of the ecological services they provide to the citizens of Maryland, and ultimately to find more plantable spaces. That's why it's coterminous with the 5 Million Trees program in our extension, where we're looking hard for expanding the areas that might be available for future forestry in Maryland. I look forward to answering any of your questions. Thank you for your time on this snowy day.
Thank you. Any questions from Senator, this witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Is there Mike Hunningsake here also?
Mike is probably virtual, I think, Senator.
Is he virtual?
No, he's not on virtual. That was his intent, to be virtual.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, let's hope they're available. He has filed testimony, as have others, including the representative of all the forestry boards, Senator.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your service. Senator Rosapep. And if you dare, bring Senator Quarterman up.
I think we're there. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Benson.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Seriously, Senator Corder, would you like to join me, or? I'm okay. You're okay, good. Yep. There's enough chairs. Come ashore if you want to come. Go ashore. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. This bill basically resolves what I think is an ambiguity in our law related to certain fantasy competitions for the purposes of betting. I had conversations with both the folks who want to offer this in the state and with the Regulatory Commission, and there's disagreement about the law and the policy. And so I introduced this bill to bring the issue before all of us. And as the members of this committee know, I am not an expert on gambling. And so I appreciate no questions to me, but I welcome questions from the members of my panel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Some of the finest testimony you've ever given.
Exactly.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matthew Pica. I'm here representing Prize Picks and to answer any questions you may have regarding the impact of Senate Bill 470 on Maryland if enacted. Joining me today is Adam Packer, Senior Vice President for Prize Picks, who is here virtually. John Pica, a lobbyist for Prize Picks. Bartlett Cleland, Director of Strategic Initiatives for NetChoice, and Robert Melvin, Director of State Government Affairs. We respectfully urge the committee for a favorable report on Senate Bill 470, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I would like to go next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Robert Melvin, and I'm with the R Street Institute. We're a public policy research organization that promotes limited, effective government. We support Senate Bill 470, which clarifies state law by defining online fantasy sports competitions like daily fantasy sports as distinct from sports gambling. It also creates a voluntary exclusion program to promote responsible gaming. Fantasy sports have been around since 1871 when Woodrow Wilson first conceptualized them, but they gained real traction in the 1960s with the creation of the Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Prognosticators League, serving as the foundation for today's industry. Originally for diehard fans with the time to track players and games over a season, fantasy sports have evolved with digital technology, and DFS reduced barriers to participation and allowed for more flexible short-term contests for cash prizes. Despite some misconceptions, DFS is not gambling. The 2006 Federal Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act classified them as games of skill, not chance, and research from MIT supports this position since fantasy sports reward skill. This measure would allow a single-player DFS where individuals compete against statistical benchmarks, expanding consumer choice and enhancing the market. The bill also promotes consumer protection by requiring fantasy sports operators to display reasonable gaming information, and directs the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Commission to establish a voluntary exclusion program for those with compulsive behaviors, thereby addressing potential addiction risks. These are proven measures that are effective at managing gaming disorders. This measure democratizes single-player DFS, ensures appropriate regulation, and carefully balances consumer choice and safety through responsible gaming measures. For these reasons, we strongly urge a favorable report of Senate Bill 470. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing me to testify. I'm Bartlett Cleland, General Counsel and Director of Strategic Initiatives for NetChoice. NetChoice is a trade association of leading e-commerce and online companies promoting the value, convenience, and choice of internet business models. Our mission is to make the internet safe for free enterprise and for free expression. I'd like to thank the chair for allowing us to be here to express our view on fantasy competitions and address the law, which will address current ambiguity that are there, as we've heard. NetChoice supports SB 470, and we respectfully ask that you support the legislation as well. And that is because it clarifies that daily fantasy sports is distinct from sports betting, supports consumer choice and innovation, and enhances consumer protections. As with all growing industries, innovation is vital to the continued success of sports entertainment. The thriving state economy, such as here, depends on a healthy and pervasive innovation ecology across all industries. Fantasy sports, as you heard, requires skill, insight, assessment, research, knowledge, and strategy on the part of the player. The skill of the player, in other words, directly affects the outcome. And to protect this innovation, this form of entertainment, the appropriate regulations should apply. Over time, consumers' preferences have changed. It's no longer what you or I might have been used to. But the contests at issue represent a cultural shift in Americans enjoying sports, and Senate Bill 470 meets this growing trend. As important it is for Maryland to allow innovation to flourish and Marylanders to enjoy their chosen entertainment, consumer protections are warranted, and SB 470 appropriately enhances consumer protections. We respectfully urge this committee to support the important legislation, and thank you again for the opportunity to testify. And I have learned that apparently I just say at the end, I'm not an expert in anything, so I expect no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like Mr. Packer to go last, if I could. So John Pica, on behalf of Prize Picks. So I've met with just about everybody in the room, but I'm glad Mr. Melvin brought up the federal law. Federal law specifically exempts fantasy sports from wagering. One is a game of chance, and the other is, as mentioned, a game of skill. For some reason, the Lottery and Gaming Control Agency has conflated the language and believes that Prize Picks should be in the sports wagering area. And it's just wrong. I mean, I respect their opinion, but it's wrong. And if it were the case, the Sports Betting Alliance would be here testifying against this bill. And they're not, because it doesn't matter to them. But there are two sports wagering companies who have written letters against the bill, and that's DraftKings and FanDuel. But what they're not telling you is they're also fantasy competition operators, and they don't want any competition from anyone else. They just want to keep the revenue for themselves. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll conclude asking for a favorable report.
Thank you. Are there two people?
The first guy is not here.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Adam Packer. I'm Senior Vice President for Legal and Compliance with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy sports operator. We offer our paid contests in over 30 states and jurisdictions in the United States. We do not offer our games in Maryland. We are not licensed as a fantasy sports operator in Maryland. We aim to be one at some point, though, and that's why we support Senate Bill 470, which clarifies state policy within the fantasy sports marketplace by stating that so-called single-player fantasy is allowed. You've heard that term once or twice already. We believe that this change would attract 8 new fantasy sports applicants to Maryland and allow 3 or 4 existing licensees to add this category of fantasy sports, bringing with them millions of dollars in tax revenue per year. The pen and paper fantasy sports of the 1980s has made room for daily fantasy sports as technology now enables contestants to research and build their teams more quickly. From the start of the daily fantasy revolution some 15 years ago, there have been multiple forms of daily fantasy sports, including single-player games. Single-player fantasy is a popular form of paid fantasy competition, is offered in at least 20 states, and has fueled much of the growth in this category. Single-player fantasy does not interfere with sports betting. Importantly, a contestant cannot make a fantasy entry based on a single event or a single outcome. Fantasy doesn't offer point spreads, coin flips, who scores the next point, or even who wins the game. It's all about player stats, and the requirement is multiple players from multiple teams. It's an imaginary team, and whether you win or lose depends on how the imaginary team performs. Senate Bill 470 would unlock additional choices for Marylanders, would generate additional revenue, and would codify consumer protections. The policy goal of a fantasy sports regulatory framework should be to encourage innovation and increase revenue to the state. Prize Picks believes that Senate Bill 470 achieves these policy goals and supports the committee issuing a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Jennings.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand the difference. And I think I've got it. So the one is sports wagering. That's where I'm betting on a game like that the Eagles will win the Super Bowl, that this player will score the first touchdown and stuff like that. What you're dealing with is, I guess where I'm doing the draft in the beginning of the season, I'm picking my team and saying, okay, I want my quarterback to be, let's say, Lamar Jackson, and I'm picking this running back and this safety, and that throughout the season, depending on how they do is how my team does. Is that correct? Is what you're dealing with?
Yeah.
That's one form of fantasy sports. And that's what I would call the pen and paper type of fantasy sports, where you draft a team on day one and you follow it throughout the entire season. What happened about 15 years ago with smartphones coming onto the scene was that fantasy sports providers realized that there was a market for faster games that would turn over every week or even every day. So that's the area that the Prize Picks and even the DraftKings and FanDuel play in, where you're entering a lineup for this weekend's games or for tonight's games, not for the beginning of the season and then tracking.
So I could basically draft every day, or every Sunday I could have a new draft, but
That's
it's
right.
based off of the players that I pick. Okay. Now
It's
I
only
understand.
based on the
Thank you.
players and the statistics that the players generate.
That they
during
have in
their
that
performance.
game for the entire game and how they do. Okay.
That's right.
That's got it.
And so they're playing against the other players that happen to be online at that time, yes? Or are they playing against the house, or both?
There are forms of fantasy sports that do both. What 470 would do would be to unlock the second category that you mentioned, Senator Gazzone, would be the form of fantasy sports where you play against the house or you play against a statistical measurement that's set by the fantasy sports provider. That type of fantasy sports is currently not permitted in Maryland.
Any other questions for the favorable panel? Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. And I have now people online. Kevin Cochran.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. Thank you to the staff as well for being flexible. Unfortunately, daycare was canceled with the 5 inches of snow we got in Bethesda. My name is Kevin Cochran, and I am a Senior Director of Legal and Government Affairs at DraftKings. Respectfully, it is DraftKings' position that Senate Bill 470 would create an opportunity for bets already being placed in Maryland under the state's sports wagering statute to instead be offered under the state's fantasy competition statute. The specific language would authorize contests in which a single participant competes against a statistical measurement established by the fantasy contest operator. From our perspective, that is indistinguishable from a proposition bet, a very common wager in sports wagering, where a sports wagering operator sets a line, oftentimes a statistical measurement on individual player performance, and a bettor places a wager where they are essentially competing against the operator, with either the bettor or the operator winning the wager. For example, whether or not a certain player scores X number of points in a basketball game is a proposition bet that sportsbooks offer in Maryland today. This change to the definition of fantasy competition would give fantasy game operators in Maryland the ability to offer that exact scenario by setting a statistical measurement for points and letting a single participant play the game directly against the operator. If the legislature is looking to clarify the language of Maryland's fantasy contest statute, we would recommend clarifying that fantasy contests are those contests played between 2 or more participants, where the operator may not serve as a participant. We believe this to be consistent with Maryland's current law that defines a fantasy competition as being reflective of the relative skill of the game of participants. A term we believe means there are 2 or more participants competing in a game of skill because of the use of the word relative. I can pause for questions, or I have one more paragraph, whatever the chair.
Yeah, why don't we take the other witness?
Great.
Mr. Butler?
Good afternoon, Chair Gazone, Vice Chair Rosenpep, and members of the Senate and Budget Taxation Committee. For the record, James Butler, Assistant Deputy Director, Chief of Staff of the Maryland Lottery Gaming Control Agency. You have a copy of our written testimony. I would like to share with the committee the evolution of the fantasy competition law in Maryland, along with the sports wagering law. The fantasy competition law was enacted in 2012 to allow Marylanders under age 18 to participate in fantasy competition games such as Xbox. This law was amended in 2018 to authorize daily fantasy competitions like what we have today in Maryland, in which 18-year-old or older individuals can participate in competition for money. In 2020, the voters of Maryland approved a sports wagering law where Marylanders 21 years of age or older can participate by placing bet on real sporting events and contests. With the fantasy competition, players participate in contests in which they pay an entry fee and select imaginary teams to participate in this contest. What the proposed bill attempts to do is to allow Marylanders 21 years or old to place wagers on head-to-head, over and under, competing against the house type contest, which is only authorized, as you heard, under the sports wagering law. This is not the first time the fantasy competition operators have tried to offer these types of wagers. In 2022, the agency issued cease and desist letters to fantasy competition operators that crossed into the line of sports wagering. Besides the differences in minimum age requirements and bet types with fantasy competition law and sports wagering law, this bill tries to allow an operator that only paid $100 to register as a fantasy competition operator to now compete in sports wagering, in which those individuals paid $500,000. And for these reasons, we urge an unfavorable report on SB 470.
Questions for these witnesses? No? Okay. Well, actually, I have one, because someone had indicated to me before that, did you add regulations to the existing law, Mr. Butler?
Yes, we have regulations under the existing fantasy competition law. We have a VEP program under there, and there are specific guidelines with these regulations that track the statutory law that's in place right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll want to give that a look once we get into all this. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have a question. Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to drill down just a little bit about when you said you added regulations. So is it my understanding that that this fantasy gambling was allowed at a time in Maryland? Did it actually take place?
No, it never took place. What the operators did when they proposed games to the agency, we evaluate those games and determine if they are in compliance with the law. We found out that they were not in compliance with the law and they could not offer those types of games in Maryland. What this bill attempts to do is to create a gray area of the law within the fantasy competition law. And that's something that the agency would be problematic for players, for the operators, as well as the regulators if you allow this gray area, what we now call daily fantasy 2.0.
You might not know this, but do you know how many states that this is, what they're proposing with this law is actually allowed?
I can get that information to you in which states have fantasy competition or DFS laws. I believe they have some individuals there that can indicate how many states have allowed this in those particular jurisdictions. But there are a number of jurisdictions, such as Maryland, which have not allowed this type of wager to take place under the guise of a fantasy competition law. States such as Maryland have recognized what they're attempting to do in creating this gray area is nothing more than sports wagering.
And I can follow up on the inverse of that question if it's okay. I have in front of me just information from 16 states that have ruled that against the House fantasy competitions are not permissible as fantasy contests, most of them finding that they are sports wagering.
So how many states allow it?
I think the representatives from Prize Picks would be able to answer that question better, how many states they're able to offer their pick'em product.
Thank you.
20 states, Mr. Chairman, allow it. If I could just say the question you asked, when you passed this bill in 2021, there was no language in the bill that said you can't compete against the operator, that a player cannot. The agency added that, and that's the reason this bill is being introduced. They, without authority, they put that in the language saying you can't compete against the operator, and what they're doing is picking a side and favoring one licensee over fantasy competition operators. We think that's unfair, and that's why the bill's put forward, so you can make the decision yourself.
And if I can clarify that, there are 13 fantasy competition operators that operate legally within Maryland's fantasy competition law. So there are operators who conform with our law and the regulations. This law was added, the regulations were added when the sports wagering law came into effect because we wanted to clarify the difference between fantasy competition and sports wagering so there would not be any confusion. Creating a gray area will cause confusion.
So, just Mr. Butler, just to be clear, so the bottom line here between the two is whether or not you play against the House or not? Is that accurate?
The difference is the games that they're proposing to operate under this DFS 2.0 are more akin to the sports wagering law, such as head-to-head competition, over and unders, competing with the House. That's in the sports wagering law. Under the fantasy competition law, there was authority for the agency to promulgate regulations, and that's what we did, and we continue to do to ensure that it stays within the bounds of the statutory language that was laid out in statute, that it doesn't drift over into sports wagering.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we're going to solve that here today, but obviously there's a little bit of confusion in all this, so we're going to have to spend some time on it later. No other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to the question about the number of states that came up earlier. There are 20 states where Prize Picks operates its single player game. There may be one or two others that would allow it, but that's the number that we have.
Right. Very good. All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Next patient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one's a little more in my wheelhouse. This is a proposal which I've been interested in for many, many years. And it is to allow local government to set differential tax rates on land versus property, in this case, within 1 mile of a transit station. This one's a little more in my... Excuse me? Hello? The bill as drafted was not as perfect as it could have been, and so there's some amendments in your file to make it more perfect. One of which is to include the purple line, which was not included in the first draft, which, given that I represent several stations, the purple line was an oversight that I didn't pick up initially. But essentially, it would give the flexibility for local governments to set differential rates. The value proposition here, and it's been proven in various places around the world, but particularly in Pennsylvania over the past couple of decades, is that if you have a higher rate on undeveloped land than you have on developed land where you want development, it will encourage folks to develop the land. And that's the point of it. And that's what we want to do around transit stops. It gives the local government the flexibility to set the rates. And that's the essence of it, Mr. Chairman. On this one, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah.
It may not be any, but that's okay.
Any questions? We have somebody virtual, yes? Both of them? Okay. And Justin, is Justin? Oh. Looks like we have a question. Well, Justin's coming up.
We got a question, all right.
Yeah. This particular bill,
Yeah.
is there any connection to or motivation to incentivize affordable housing?
Not in the bill.
Not in this bill. Okay, so it wasn't part of the thinking. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Oh, Senator Benson have a question? Oh, sorry. No, Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Roosevelt, you mentioned you included the purple line within the amendment?
Yes.
Where did you include that?
It's an amendment.
Was it not covered through the any metro stations?
No, because Purple Line is not
Rails.
Metro.
What's that?
Purple Line is not Metro.
Okay, go ahead.
So we specifically call out MARC, MTA, Metro, and we added Purple Line.
Light rail. All right, thanks.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Justin Fiore here on behalf of the Maryland Municipal League in support of Senate Bill 472 with amendments. You have my written testimony, but we're really intrigued. I think it's a great concept that's worked in other municipalities and states across the country. So we're supportive of the effort, but we would like to clarify or ask for an amendment regarding where the money goes after it's taxed. So this bill establishes a new precedent where some of the local property tax dollars would be given to the state, diverted to the state. We don't really love that practice and think it puts municipal officials in an odd position of effectively voting for a state tax increase. So we would ask for an amendment to keep local taxes local, and if the state wants to use the state property tax for a similar provision, by all means. So with that, we
Oh, that
ask
sounds
for.
like a great idea to me.
Yeah, exactly. I like that provision of the bill.
Understood.
Mr. Canale.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of the bill with amendments. You have my written testimony. I echo the concerns of my colleague from MML. Counties feel like this is a great tool to enhance economic growth, infrastructure investment, and transit-oriented development, especially in high potential areas. But local governments bear the responsibility for the land use planning, the infrastructure, the public services, and yet the bill directs half of the revenue away from local governments. So we are concerned that this would set a harmful precedent by allowing the state to take a share of locally imposed property tax revenue. So we would urge an amendment to make sure that this money stays local with counties and municipalities, and that would guarantee that the funding stays in the communities that generate it and support local infrastructure and economic initiatives. So we support smart growth policies that encourage development near transit hubs, but we do need fiscal tools that enhance and not limit local control. So we would ask for a favorable report with an amendment to ensure that the revenue stays local, and we're happy to work with the committee and the bill sponsor to work out some numbers here, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions for anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator McCray. What? Oh, we got another, oh, sorry. Oh, I see, yeah. Very good. Mr. Lynn, sorry about that.
That's all right. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. My name is Benjamin Lynn. I work with ATU Local 689. We support this bill and urge a favorable report. Local 689 members are working class people who make their living running the region's transit systems. Crisis of housing affordability and the lack of accessible communities has hit our workers particularly hard. This has magnified the fact that the systems we power too often only operate in areas that are out of reach for our families. We don't have enough transit accessible communities, and housing in a few communities we do have is so scarce that's unaffordable for working class people. Land value return, also known as split roll, is a solution we see to solve both the funding shortfall while also incentivizing transit-oriented development under LVR, multifamily housing, mixed-use development, and other more maximized use of plots of lands are advantaged. Thus, if we apply to areas surrounding transit, the approach could yield transformative results. We could have a way to fund both transit and also not penalize housing production. It's a fundamental fairness principle is at stake here. Land around transit stations is made more valuable by them, and at their core, rapid transit is a public investment. Allowing the returns to land to be entirely kept as a windfall benefit to private entities doesn't make sense. All jurisdictions, including counties in and around DC, as well as Baltimore, should have the ability to enact such a measure if they so choose. We would like to thank the sponsor and highly encourage the bill, highly encourage the committee to favorably report the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Thank you very much. Okay, Senator McCray.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Corey McCray, 45th Legislative District, and I'm here in reference to Senate Bill 499. Mr. Chair, this is an administration bill, just to reiterate the conversation of highway user revenue dollars. This is where the city is just asking for our percentage increase to go from 9.5 to 12.2%. I think that we all are aware of the issues that we have with our roads, our bridges, and just want to make sure that we keep this conversation going.
Questions for the senator? Did someone from the?
I think the snow obviously creates a little bit of kerfuffle.
Yeah. Questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Senator King. Bring your panel up, if you have it. You have two bills, 516, start with. Nobody wants to come sit next to you?
No, I have that problem today. Senate Bill 516. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, you have all heard from me many times on the need to grow safe, quality child care programs in our state. In just the past few years, Maryland has experienced a 15.5 decline in licensed child care providers, with home-based child care providers experiencing the most significant declines in that span, with an overall rate of decline of 21.6%. The bill before you today is enabling legislation that will update and add to legislation that has not been changed since the 1980s. Currently, counties are authorized to offer a tax credit for child care providers' real property, and a similar credit is available for businesses that create on-site space for child care. But because the law's current limitations on facility age and the low dollar amount, the use of the current credits is very low. For example, in Montgomery County in 2023, only 5 child care providers received the county's property tax credit, with a total of just $11,122 in child care property tax credits awarded countywide. Senate Bill 516, which again is enabling legislation, will do several things. It will broaden 2 child care related property tax credits already allowed in state law so that any registered child care provider or business that offers on-site child care, regardless of the age of their building, could qualify for a local tax credit. It will raise the limit on the property tax credit for child care providers from $3,000 to $10,000 and conform the tax credit for businesses to the same limit. It updates the law by including large family child care homes. And finally, it makes some technical changes, including adding Baltimore City to the provisions, allowing all counties the authority allowing all counties the authority to adopt additional eligibility criteria when implementing the credits. The need for safe, quality childcare is more important than ever. This enabling legislation is just one more tool to help increase the childcare openings in our state, and I ask for a favorable report.
Two questions, Senator. One is, you mentioned the decline in home-based childcare, where you cited some statistics about down 25%. What is the explanation for that, or the theory behind, in particular, why home-based childcare?
I think it's just too expensive for people to put these childcare centers together, is what I understand. You can ask the experts, but that's my understanding.
I didn't understand why the existing tax credit is used so little.
I don't either.
Okay. Maybe we have some other witnesses that might address that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator? Let's do Mr. Canale while he's up and let whoever else was set up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator King, I'm sorry I can't sit here at the table.
Me too.
But I am here virtually for you. So we're in strong support of Senate Bill 516. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties. You do have my written testimony, but we support the bill. We feel like this is a smart bill, a locally driven approach to addressing the statewide child care shortage while preserving county authority over local budgets. We know that a lack of child care options restricts workforce participation, particularly for women, limits economic mobility, and hinders business growth. So expanding access to this high quality, affordable childcare supports Maryland families, employers, and economic development. So I think the senator did a great job of explaining what the bill does, but we believe that the bill provides a reasonable and smart and practical tool for counties to support providers and strengthen Maryland's economy, and we'd ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much, and you may begin.
I am in favor of any bill Senator King wants to have because she is our child care champion.
We are too.
She's our champion. Okay. If her name wasn't on it, I would still be in favor of the bill because the bill will let us keep money in our pockets instead of taking it out of our pockets as taxpayers, going through all the government agencies and to try to get it back. So I'm in favor of that type of funding to begin with. To answer your question, sir, about the decline of family child care, it's pretty simple. It's overregulation, it's abuse of power on the part of the Office of Child Care, and it's because the demand and supply of child care in the state of Maryland is totally off balance by age group. Family daycare providers get phone calls. Can you take care of my baby? Can you take care of my baby? No, you have to bring me a child that's 24 months old. I've got 4 openings for children that are over 2, and I can't take your baby. I've had women cry in my arms when I've got openings in my business for over 2, and I can't take them. In House Bill 640 in 1987 had a provision in it to be able to take care of infants more than 2 under the age of 2 in family daycare. That was shut down by the fire marshal. 10 minutes later, he also told me that he would not honor the bill by counting my children under the age of 2. I had to count them under the age of 6. I would have lost my house. I was able to get a waiver from the fire marshal and be able to do what the law says. But in 2095, the law was changed through the regulatory process by counting the provider's children under the age of 6 instead of under the age of 2. Nobody can now get a waiver. In 2013, they started subtracting on the certificate what you're allowed to do. The abuse of power is horrendous. People are being shut down. They're not quitting. Large family daycare, on the other hand, is expanding. There used to be 5 people doing 12 children. In Montgomery County, there are now 62. Large family daycare has grown to 154 people because it works, and it works because of the Senate bill that was passed in 2011, but there's problems with it. the reason that group homes didn't work was because the regulations required you to have 2 people at all times. So you open your door at 7 o'clock in the morning, 1 baby comes in. Prior to that Senate bill in 2011, you got to have 2 people there. That's not financially feasible. Senate Bill 2011 lets us open the door like a family daycare provider. Go up, have 2 babies, not counting our own kids, and go up to 8 children. When the 3rd baby comes in or the 9th child comes in, we have to have a second staff member. That's okay, all right? Large family daycare, there's one provider that has 6 children that are under the age of 2 and 6 children that are over the age of 2 because the building has to be improved. You can't have sliding glass doors, you need a ground level walkout, you need to have fire, smoke detectors hardwired with a carbon monoxide on it. It's thousands of dollars, but it's a one-time expense, it's okay. It took me 9 years, $750,000 to expand my business. I've got 30 kids, 12 infants. A lot of centers went out of business because you're trying to get the income from the center in the building and the property with the expenses that you only need Monday through Friday during the day. Family daycare is less expensive because it is a mixed use. We get to live there and we get to operate the business there. There's only 2 people that have succeeded.
You're way over your time. You gotta stop.
Okay. Yes, I'll stop.
I gave you a little extra because I know you were trying to answer some questions too in the process, so thank you.
Sure.
And Ms. Colmers.
Thank you so much. Ellie Colmers, on behalf of SEIU Local 500, who, in addition to other business sectors, also represents family child care providers. We are enthusiastically supportive of this bill. I think that the problem, like the affordability problem with childcare, is faced both by the families, and I'm sure you've all heard from constituents about how difficult it is to find childcare, how expensive it is. In Maryland, childcare, the average childcare cost is more than in-state college tuition per year, which is staggering. And for those of us who can't afford that, the option is you stay home, come out of the workforce. It impacts the economy. It has a cascading effect. The other side of it is that the childcare providers are also unable to make ends meet in many ways. And so this enabling legislation, which, you know, this budget year, we all have to really emphasize that. It's enabling, we're not requiring this, but that it enables the counties to provide this tax credit to childcare providers who are looking to get into the business, looking to invest in their business, expand their businesses, as my colleague here was saying. And you know, we think that this is a really good step forward and sensibility, I would say. And that's something that, you know, we've at SEIU, and I also work with MSCCA, talked about, and Laura Wheeldriver, who you hear from Maryland Family Network. I think a big issue with a lot of these programs to help is because we need a hub that people can go to and actually get the information of what is available. So I think that that's a big factor in why it's underutilized.
There's nothing structural in the tax credit. It's
Well,
just
I
people
mean,
don't know about it.
other than the fact that it was enacted 40 years ago and hasn't been increased. So, I mean, the bang for your buck,
it isn't as big as you'd like it to be, which is for the bill, but it sounds like people are leaving money on the table because they don't know about it.
Correct, and this also expands it so that other types of child care providers. So there's child care centers, there's family child care, and large child care. So it expands it so that everyone is able to participate in it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions, this panel? Thank you very much. Did we get everybody on the favorable on that? Okay.
Think so?
Very good.
I'll look at it.
All right, we'll move on to Senate Bill 610.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you're going to miss a good bill. I will. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is the first time this bill is being heard in Budget and Tax. In 2021, the Growing Family Child Care Opportunities legislation was heard in EEE and passed as a pilot program. Last year, based on the amazing success of this program, this bill is being heard. A little backlash there. It was heard again in EEE and established as a permanent program. The number of family child care programs in Maryland has declined precipitously over the past 2 decades, from approximately 12,500 in 1996 to 4,300 in 2023, a trend that's mirrored nationally. Licensed family child care programs are distinct from child care centers and are typically operated by a woman in their homes caring for up to 8 children. These family child care programs are a critical component of the overall supply of child care and a necessary or preferable option for many parents due to cost, geographic proximity, hours of availability, and cultural or linguistic concerns. Participants in GOFCC receive support through a cohort model that has the benefit of helping to reduce provider isolation, and they receive training on topics such as licensing, the Child Care Scholarship Program, tracking expenses, and filing taxes. Additional areas of training are available after talking directly with participants to gain a better idea of what they see as their greatest areas of need. My panel today will tell you more, but the big news is that the outcomes and results of this program are impressive. And that's what Senate Bill 610 will do. It will build on this low-cost pilot program created in 2021 so we can continue the program's success in increasing the supply of licensed family child care programs in Maryland. The program is funded in the FY 2026 budget. Senate Bill 610 is asking for a continued funding in FY 27 and 28. Mr. Chair, we are asking for an increase in the funding to be able to open more child care slots in the state, and I certainly understand our budget concerns this year, but this is a program that in the end may pay for itself by allowing new small businesses to open and allowing more parents to return to the workforce. Our state depends on child care to keep parents earning while their children are in safe, quality child care programs, and I ask for a favorable report.
Should we go to the next witness?
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Rosa Pepp and honorable members. Thank you, Senator King, for bringing this bill. I'm Laura Wheeldryer, Executive Director of Maryland Family Network, here in enthusiastic support for Senate Bill 610. It's actually a perfect companion bill with the last bill you discussed, kind of a 1-2 punch. The GOFCC program is successfully addressing the family child care shortage in Maryland, reducing child care deserts, and improving access to high-quality child care. The program guides predominantly female entrepreneurs through the state's child care licensure process, cutting the time required to open a new family child care program to about 6 months. You have my written testimony, so today I would just like to highlight some top-line results. In just over 2 years, the program has opened 198 new family child care businesses and added 1,375 child care slots across 19 jurisdictions in this state. GOFCC is the only family child care pipeline program in the entire state, so attempting by itself to reverse this decades-long trend of declining family child care. And by the way, those new slots include 312 slots specifically for infants and toddlers. This effort is especially impactful in underserved communities in areas like Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore. And by the way, it's supporting the efforts of predominantly underemployed Black and brown women to open new, small, successful businesses. Through the 8 regional child care resource centers, coaches are opening new programs and ensuring their long-term sustainability. Program participants are trained in child development and running a small business. We're addressing child care access challenges that often impact a family's ability to work or go to school. This is a proven solution to Maryland's child care crisis. Continued investment is vital to increase the number of new programs and the number of new childcare slots available to families. I thank you for your support of Maryland's youngest children. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator King's bill, in favor. It doesn't help to open up more family child care spaces. If you opened up, as my colleague said, 1,300 slots, but the family daycare providers cannot fill them because only 312 of them are allowed to be infants, which is the demand for child care, it's not going to work. A lady that I spoke to on Monday's been in business for 2 years. She's got the 2 infant spaces filled. She cannot get the 4 children over the age of 2, and she's thinking about closing. We've got to solve the imbalance of supply and demand by age group. Stop talking about childcare slots. Start talking about infants over 2s, and stop taking our 3-4s. We have to close because you're putting us out of business. If in large family daycare under COMAR .03, group size and staffing, if we put in mixed ages, what the bill HB 640 had in 1987, that would be a huge help in getting a better balance of infant care versus preschool care. I had a military mom crying in my arms because I didn't have the paperwork for the Excels for her to be able to use her vouchers. I couldn't take her child. Non-compliances are really difficult for a business owner to work with. The regulations require us to get the parent, to get the doctor, to get the office manager, to get the nurse, to get the mail clerk to give us all of the paperwork for shots and medical records. The credentialing program was a good program because it gave money directly to the providers. However, somebody did an oops, and everybody that had their anniversary in July of 2024 didn't get their money. That, to me, that's a breach of contract. But they're calling it an oops. They forgot to put it in the funding. Okay, wrap it up.
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. To the previous speaker, you mentioned something about streamlining the process.
Yes, sir.
Please explain.
So part of what GoFCC does is it helps cohorts of women start working on multiple tracks at the same time. So licensure and things like a fire marshal visit, certificates of occupancy, other health and safety things at the same time as they're getting their own personal qualifications to be a child care provider and learning about business practices. So instead of, if you're doing this on your own, thinking like I'll do one at a time, and that could take 12 to 18 months to complete, this is saying like, nope, we're gonna do this intensive, working on multiple tracks in parallel, because what do these women need to earn money? This is a job, they need to get open. So we see women drop out when they're doing this on their own and they can't get to the part where they bring home a salary fast enough. So this is an intense and supported with coaches, mentors, trainers to get them through. No shortcuts on things like quality or licensure. Those are very important. So I don't want you to take any impression that we're shortcutting what our children need, but we want to get them to the point of serving families who are desperate for care and women who need to earn a salary.
Thank you. I just needed you to clarify that
Okay,
on the
sorry.
record. I don't think
I'm excited.
I don't think anyone would shortcut the system, but for those who are listening, they need to understand
Yes,
that for families who are entrusting their most precious
exactly.
beings, that there are no shortcuts. So thank you for putting that on record.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
See if I understand. It's basically a cohort.
It is, yes.
And how big are the cohorts and how often are the cohorts operating?
2 or 3 times a year, and by jurisdiction, I think they wait to get 20, let's say it tops out at 40. We run the cohorts in English and in Spanish. We have more demand than we can serve right now for women who want to do this. And I think we've just been delighted by, for example, so much interest on the Eastern Shore. You know, there are huge parts of the state that are really predominantly served by family child care.
Sure, of course.
So it's meeting a critical need, and there's a lot of enthusiasm.
I'm sold on the need. I just want to understand the mechanics. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Ellie Colmers on behalf of the Maryland State Child Care Association and SEIU Local 500 in enthusiastic support. We're very enthusiastic over here, passionate. I know your committee is taking on some really serious budget debates this year. We know it's tough. But as you're making those decisions, you should be investing in programs with a proven track record, and this is one of them. And not only does it have a proven track record of investing in the childcare providers, but it has that, again, cascading effect of opening up more childcare slots so that people can return to work. According to a recent report from the Comptroller's Office, about 160,000 women have exited the workforce primarily due to childcare and transportation obstacles. That's staggering. And it's worth noting again also that it's mostly women. So this is an equity issue. This is an economic issue, and investing in a program that we know works, I think just makes sense. So we really encourage you to support this bill and return a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, excuse me. No, I want to thank the senator for this bill, first of all, because in my district, it is a problem that we don't give the parent the opportunity that they need when they have children. And it's been costly for them because since it's so costly for them to even have the kids, what they have to get for them and everything else, but just having provision, and the only way they can have that is working. So, I believe it's hard, as you stated, the state and the state that it's in, but it's a good thing that I believe we can bring and help this bill. So, say it isn't so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for both these bills. We know that if we're going to get people back to the workforce, particularly women from COVID, we have to have childcare. Both bills have focused more on family-owned businesses, yet there's also the phenomenon of larger businesses closing as well. For example, Frederick Community College, after 30 years of a childcare program, will be closing it this May. A lot of community pushback, but financially it's not viable. Is there anything in either of these bills that would be of benefit to an organization such as that?
Well, actually, I just had a bill in EEE that does cover that. It's for a task force to look at all of the child care issues and to come up with a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We would like to hear from her. She's a Go FCC graduate, so I'd like to hear from her.
Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Gillis. I'm the owner of Olivia's Little Learners in Denton on the Eastern Shore. I was invited by Maryland Family Network to share my experience today. I'm proud to say that my program has been open for almost a year and a half. It's hard to believe it's been that long already. I'm also a mom to a 2, 4, and 10-year-old. You might think that I already knew everything there was to know about providing childcare, but there's so much more to this work than most people think. It all started when I was looking for information on how to start my own family childcare program. I learned about Maryland Family Network's Go FCC, Growing Opportunities for Family Childcare. I joined Go FCC and they made sure I had all the required classes I needed to get licensed at no cost. That was huge. I also took a business finance class and I learned so much. Normally, I would just hand my W-2 right over to my accountant but the class taught me about taxes, record keeping, income and expenses, and deductions. I even learned how to make a budget and a cash flow report. I'm so much more organized now than I was before GoFCC. Maryland Family Network continued to support me after I opened. Their Family Child Care Resource Center worked with me on MSDE's Excels program, and I was able to achieve Maryland Excel's quality rating level 2 thanks to their help. Childcare can be a lonely business. You can get burned out very easily, but Maryland Family Network's Child Care Resource Center will sometimes call to touch base and see how things are. That really keeps me going. Don't get me wrong, I love the children, but sometimes I need to talk with other adults about the work, exchange ideas, and swap stories. Taking the classes offered by GoFCC has also allowed me to network with other providers in my area, and it's nice that some of us have kept in touch after the classes. The child care system in Maryland isn't perfect, but I know that I'm doing my part. My heart melts when a child says, "Miss Olivia, I love you." That usually starts the other kids saying it too. Now, I don't know how you measure success at your job, but I feel like I'm doing really important work when I've got a whole group of kids hugging me, telling me they love me. Thank you, GoFCC, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very, very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Thank you for joining us.
That's it.
That's it. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 610. We now go to Senate Bill 598. Senator Hedelman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Budget and Tax Committee. I'm Shelley Hedelman, Senator from District 11, and I'm here today with my virtual witnesses to present Senate Bill 598. Before I go through what this does, I will short circuit it by saying we have come to a conclusion that a better way of addressing some of the issues that are raised by this legislation, we can do it through an amendment, and so I will talk about that in a minute. The developers who this bill would affect are low-income housing developers, and you'll hear from some of them shortly. They have had some challenges working with SDAT and getting certain of their properties through the assessment process. So rather than going through the whole bill, I'm just the amendment was recently sent over this afternoon, and what the amendment would do would just have a better form of communication between the Department of Housing and Community Development and SDAT with regard to the transactions of the low-income housing tax credit, and informing those two entities so that the assessment process can move more expeditiously. So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, turn it over to my witnesses who can talk about how this practically improves their lives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. All right, these are all online. Ms. Davis.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Chair Gazone and members of the committee, my name is Mary Claire Davis, and I am the director of AHC Greater Baltimore. We are a nonprofit housing developer active in Maryland. I'm here today to support Senate Bill 598. I believe this bill can streamline the process of evaluating affordable housing developments accurately at the time of assessment. Our organization is an owner and operator of housing communities throughout the state, many of which have affordability restrictions that limit the amount of rent we charge and provide an important resource for economically vulnerable Marylanders. Our experiences and that of many other owners and operators of affordable housing in the state is that the income approach is not always applied at the original assessment, as it should for income restricted properties. And then we might receive an unexpectedly high assessment. This requires the need to appeal, creating administrative and third-party costs to utilize experts to navigate the appeals system. This problem also creates additional government work to review the appeals. Our hope is this legislation will simplify the process for all sides and eliminate cost and time burdens for all involved. We ask you for your support to move this legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gazzoni and members of the committee. Tom Cole, representing the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition. This is one of two of our priority bills this session. As Senator Hedelman described, we're trying to approach something that SSTAT agrees with us. This is how it should be done. However, in practice, they are not doing it. This is part of their procedurals manual that we were working with the sponsors to have codified. What the compromise amendment is for right now that we would ask the committee to incorporate would have DHCD, and DHCD is the one who negotiated this amendment and this resolution. DHCD would notify SSTAT directly saying this is a LIHTC, a low-income housing tax credit project, therefore this is how it should be assessed. Because as Mary Claire just described, our members are having to not only appeal their assessments, but in many instances prepay a flawed assessment and then try to seek that reimbursement after getting that assessment changed. And as you all are likely already aware with the projects that are in your district, affordable housing development and operation is a very fragile financial position to be in the first place, but to have to manage the prepayment of these taxes, to get them reimbursed, hiring a tax attorney, going through all of that, it is very harmful to what we are all trying to do, which is create more affordable housing. So we appreciate the bill as written. That honestly was what we were looking to get done. We want to work with SSTAT. We want to work with DHCD on the compromise amendment, but we do need this legislation because the status quo right now is just unacceptable and it's unworkable, which is why, again, this is one of two of MIG's top priority bills this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Aide? No, you're on mute, so. You have to do it.
I see. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gazzone and members of the committee. My name is Tom Aide, the CEO of Green Street Housing, an affordable housing developer located in Salisbury, Maryland. I strongly support SB 598, which ensures LIHTC properties are assessed using the income-based valuation method. Right now, assessors often use permit values or acquisition costs, ignoring the income restrictions of LIHTC properties. This leads to assessments as much as 3 times higher than their true value. For example, one of our properties was assessed at $12 million when its actual income-based valuation was only $4 million. And we were left to negotiate and ultimately settle at $6 million, which still was unfair for the housing. These inflated assessments create major problems, higher operating costs, financing uncertainty, and lengthy appeals that delay projects and add hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs. In one case, an appeal took 7 months, delayed our closing by 10 months, and cost the project over $300,000. This bill brings consistency and fairness by ensuring assessments reflect the restricted income of LIHTC properties. I urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions for any of these witnesses? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues of Budget and Taxation Committee. For the record, Senator Craig Zucker here with strong support of TURP Succeed. First and foremost, this bill is not a mandate, although it is an endorsement and an aspiration. TURP Succeed, and let me first thank not only the panelists and the students that came out today, but the hard work of the University of Maryland, who has really put this program at the forefront, as well as the Developmental Disabilities Council, who helped start to fund it. So TURP Succeed is a fully inclusive post-secondary program, really unique not only in the state of Maryland, Mr. Chair, but I think could be a model for the country, where we're taking students who are wonderful, pairing them up with other students to provide mentoring, to provide guidance, to make sure that that all students are fully included as they should be. The goal of this, if it were to be funded now and into the future, would be add staff, add scholarships for those individuals that can't participate. And Mr. Chairman, already we've seen more than 21 students participate, and we have 15 students currently participating in this program. But I not only wanted to thank those that are participating, but the students are helping to lead it. So with that, I'll answer any technical questions later, but I'll turn it over to this very distinguished panel.
Hello, my name is Carly Ruderman, and I am a student at the TERP Succeed program at the University of Maryland. Some clubs that I've been involved in are the club cheer team and Best Buddies. And some of my favorite memories have been going to football and basketball games and watching performances at the Clarice Smith Performing Arts Center. Going to college means a lot for me because I get to be independent, because I get to live with a roommate away from my family, I get support from peer mentors, and some of my independent living skills include doing laundry, chores, and navigating campus on my own, sometimes with help from a peer mentor. So I am a freshman majoring in performing arts, and one of my favorite classes this semester is the history of pop music. And I also have an internship at the costume shop at the Clarice, where I get to sort different jewelry and accessories. And having an internship on campus means that I'm developing skills that are applicable for my future jobs. And in conclusion, going to the University of Maryland, I feel so honored and blessed to be following in my footsteps and to be following in my family's footsteps of becoming a TERP.
Hello, and thank you, Chair Gazzoni and Vice Chair Rosenpep, and thank you, Senator Zucker, and all members of the committee. My name is Amy Dwyer-Diagati, and I am the director of TERP Succeed at the University of Maryland, College Park. We are the only inclusive higher ed program for students with intellectual disabilities who leave high school. I could sit here and I could tell you thousands of stories that would make you feel really good about TERP Succeed, but that is not why I'm here. I want to explain why it is so important to the state of Maryland and the economy. Our education system in Maryland is top-notch, and we do a fabulous job of including students with disabilities in the education system through high school. But then what happens is our students with intellectual disabilities, they graduate and they watch their siblings and their peers and their friends go off to college and get jobs. And what do? For this population, statistics show that roughly 25% become employed, and a good portion of that are underemployed. That leaves 75% unemployed. So what do? There are a lot of great state-funded programs for students with intellectual disabilities. They're not always inclusive, and they are expensive. So that's where college comes into play. Why does anybody go to college? To get a better job than if they didn't go to college. And that is exactly the same for our TERP Succeed students. They come, they take courses, they audit them, but they are full participants. They live on campus, they work on campus. And what's really important is then they become marketable. They gain the skills, they graduate, and they get jobs, and they are tax-paying citizens of Maryland. And at the same time, we train hundreds of mentors, 100 mentors a semester, to learn critical skills on conflict resolution and problem solving that they take with them into their, many different fields. And so this kind of funding that could keep us going, we could grow this program and we could replicate it across the entire state of Maryland so that there are programs like ours in many. So imagine that, hundreds of people with intellectual disabilities getting jobs and thousands of mentors entering our economy. So thank you, and we ask for your support.
Hello, Senators. My name is Luke Amaral. I'm a senior, hoping to graduate with a biology degree this coming spring. And I'm here to talk to you about my experience as a peer mentor in the Terp Succeed program. So my role is I go to classes, clubs, and extracurricular activities with the Terp Succeed students and just provide whatever kind of support that they need. And I really have to say that this is always a huge highlight of my day, seeing these students. Their passion for being a Terp is really, really infectious and makes me more excited to be a student here. And their positivity really lifts me up, even on the days when I'm the most drained. By accompanying them to their classes and extracurricular activities, it also exposes me to more of the resources that are offered on campus, which just makes me a more educated, well-rounded student. I would like to say that a lot of the peer mentors who come into the program have actually never worked with a student or person with a disability. But despite that, many of them are retained in the program and go on to be lead peer mentors and continue their support of Terp Succeed. So this retention really shows the positive impact for students without disabilities who get involved. So in addition to this, we work on tasks we work on skills that are transferable and applicable in the workplace, like Amy was saying, whether it's task analysis, where we try to take bigger problems and break them down into their component parts to make it more digestible for Terp Succeed students. We practice effective communication skills, making sure that everything we say is clear, kind, and direct. And I've seen the benefit of the Terp Succeed program in my own experience. I was recently offered a position with the Peace Corps to serve as a Spanish literacy promoter in the Dominican Republic. And I really have to say thanks in large part to my experience with Terp Succeed because they helped me develop skills that differentiated me and made my application more convincing. So the Terp Succeed program has really enriched my college experience, making it more enjoyable and helping me develop professionally.
That's awesome. All of you, your enthusiasm makes me proud to be a Terp. Are there any questions? If the whole committee was here, I would have probably just called a vote right away on it. This is a great bill, but I want everybody to have a chance to vote on it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Well, look at this. I got a bill now. Or do I? I'm going to ask Favor, who is working in my office this year, to come on up, and she's going to present the bill. And I guess we have a couple people on the panel, if they want to come up. Oh, they're all on virtual? Okay. Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Favor Obasiolo, and I have the privilege of serving as a graduate legislative fellow in Senator Gazzoni's office. Today, I am here to present Senate Bill 668, Earned Income Tax Credit, Individuals Without Qualifying Children Eligibility, also known as the EITC Expansion Bill. Maryland is one of the 31 states that values its hardworking, lower-income citizens by offering a state version of the EITC. This bill seeks to address the issue of limited access to the Earned Income Tax Credit for lower-income individuals without qualifying children. This credit is one of the most powerful anti-poverty tools utilized by federal, state, and local governments. And while the EITC is a vital tax credit meant to provide financial relief for working families, its current structure excludes many low-income workers who do not have dependents. The existing phase-out income threshold are set too low, meaning many hardworking Marylanders who earn a modest wage do not qualify for this benefit. Right now, many young workers are not eligible to receive the EITC, or they receive a very small credit, which means they're taxed further into poverty. Senate Bill 668 proposes to raise these income thresholds, thereby expanding eligibility and ensuring more low-income workers can access the financial relief they deserve. By increasing the phase-out levels, this bill will help provide tax relief to a broader group of people, ultimately supporting those who need it the most. Expanding the EITC would allow more Marylanders to claim up to $600 during tax season. Senate Bill 668 represents a crucial step forward in ensuring that Maryland's hardworking, low-income individuals, especially those without dependents, are not left behind. I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on Senate Bill 668 to help ensure that more Marylanders can benefit from the Earned Income Tax Credit. Thank you.
You made it through. Any questions for my assistant? Okay. Let's go to the virtual. Ms. Moore.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tanea Moore, and I'm the Director of Policy at the Cash Campaign of Maryland. CASH stands for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope, and we promote the economic advancement for low to moderate income people in Baltimore and all across the state of Maryland. More than half of our clients earn less than $20,000 annually, and we offer a variety of services, including free tax prep for people making less than $67,000. CASH also leads tax credits for Maryland families, a coalition that advocates for greater economic security through tax credits for low-income working families. We are here in full support of this bill, which ensures that more low-income workers who don't have dependents can still benefit from this crucial tax credit, the EITC. While Maryland's EITC has a 100% match to the federal EITC for single filers, few single taxpayers benefit from the maximum credit of $600. For example, someone working one part-time job for 15 hours a week at minimum wage rate will receive about $450 of the EITC at the state level, a 100% match of the amount of the federal EITC that particular taxpayer would receive. However, if that same taxpayer had worked 25 hours a week, they would receive $0 of the EITC. Single filers in Maryland would greatly benefit from an EITC expansion. Every year, we see clients who are just over the cutoff who could benefit from the poverty lifting power of the EITC. Consider one of CASH's tax clients, Mr. Lowe, a single taxpayer who is a non-custodial parent. Mr. Lowe has a 14-year-old son and works with heavy equipment. Due to a work-related injury, he needs double hip surgery, which limits how much he can work. Due to the low income limit set by Congress for single taxpayers, he is ineligible for the EITC. Mr. Lowe stated that receiving the credit will help with basic essentials like rent, food, and transportation. The Cash Campaign of Maryland urges a favorable report for Senate Bill 668 to ensure that hardworking individuals without qualifying dependents can receive the financial relief that they need. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership on the bill, and thank you, Favor, for your testimony.
Thank you. Golly?
Thank you, Chair Gazzoni, members of the committee. My name is Callie Shumitz. I'm Vice President for External Relations with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy. So this here in strong support of Senate Bill 668. This year is the 50th anniversary of the EITC, and it really remains one of the most effective anti-poverty tools that we have. The thing that is nice about the EITC is it's a really easy way to get flexible economic support to people who are working but aren't paid enough to afford the basics. Research shows, and just as Tanea was just sharing, when people get these funds, they use these tax credits to meet basic household needs like food, clothing, utility bills, car repairs. And we also know that most EITC recipients only qualify for the credit for a couple years before their incomes increase. So I'm proud to say that Maryland has a really strong state EITC to complement the federal credit, thanks to the past work of this committee. However, the current structure leaves out some low-income workers who would really benefit from the credit. In 2023, you all took action to ensure that people who don't claim dependent children on their taxes get a higher credit. So we now match 100% of the federal credit, which is will be up to $630 when people file their 2024 taxes. However, most Marylanders still aren't benefiting from that change because they earn too much to qualify under the current income limits. So SB 668 would raise the income limit to $27,000 up to from $17,640 where it is today, allowing about 170,000 Marylanders to become eligible for the credit. So we often refer to this population by their tax filing status as a shorthand to explain who this bill affects, but we know that some of the populations who would benefit are young adults just getting started in the workforce, parents who are separated and aren't the primary caregiver, expectant parents, veterans, older adults with adult children. So for these reasons, we would ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 668. Thank you.
Any questions for this panel? Thank you very much. It's not lost. I mean, we didn't know exactly what the number would be. Obviously, it's got a big fiscal note. I think this issue, I mean, clearly, as a committee, we've been working on these issues for years, and I think we should keep working on them to the degree that we can. It's obviously got a big note. We'll have to look at if there's any way to make it trimmed down to get something moving. I don't know if that's going to be possible or not in this situation that we're in right now, but nonetheless, my team and I think this is important to keep talking about. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senate Bill 450, Frederick County Senators. Senator Folden should be lucky to have you there in pitch hitting for him.
He is literally testifying as we speak downstairs. Thank you, Chair, committee members. For the record, Senator Paul Quarterman, District 2, representing Washington, in this case, Frederick counties as well. Before us is Senate Bill 450. The gaming acceptance of credit card as a payment. Basically, this bill authorizes volunteer fire, rescue, and ambulance companies and their auxiliary organizations that are conducting gaming events in Frederick County for their own benefit to accept credit cards from a person as payment to pay a gaming device or in a gaming event. Excuse me. This bill has received unanimous bipartisan support from the delegation. Passed the delegation 14-0 with one absentee. We would request a favorable report.
And we have a letter?
We do. Letter's in here. Hopefully they uploaded it, but there's a letter right here.
Yes, Senator Jackson.
Yes, sir. Senator Quarterman, I know it's a local bill. I support local bills, but I have a question about accepting credit for gambling. I mean, when we're trying to, tell me the thought process behind having to accept credit versus tokens, which is allowed, versus, to ensure that folks have the dollars that they need. So just tell me the thought process behind that.
Well, I mean, I know from the discussions we had in the delegation before, for me, my point was it's a accepted standard already in our state. We accept credit cards for sports gaming. We accept credit cards at video lottery terminals. I think the reality of the world we live in, people use credit cards for a variety of different things. I understand the concern. We don't want people to get maxed out on their credit, things of that nature. But we're trying to support, again, our local volunteer companies, again, because a lot of people just don't carry cash on them these days, and people have that option to use. And so that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, that concludes the hearing. We're going to take a couple-minute break, literally couple-minute break before we start voting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, it's not bad. Okay, let's get going.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So what, Phil, what's going on with this first one, 194? There's some activity on the house, and is there something easy maybe we can comply with or no? Or?
The House Subcommittee took it this morning. The department is here in case there's any questions you want to go through, but this is a Senate Bill 194. This is a departmental bill from DGS. What the bill does is raises the threshold for lease procurements for a non-competitive lease procurement process, goes up from 2,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. And then, so that exempts them from the competitive procurement process in addition to some notice requirements. And then the bill also is for the properties that are still subject to those notice requirements, altering that by repealing a requirement of 30 days notice is taken down to 20 days notice for advertisement. And then it's also, current law has a requirement to advertise in daily or weekly newspapers in the locality and to the people of the state. The bill is changing that to advertising on DGS's website and in eMaryland Marketplace.
And so on the other side, they're talking about, there was a little concern about getting rid of the newspapers. Is that what it was?
There was questions in the House Subcommittee about how much the newspaper advertising drives the procurement activity.
We didn't hear any comment from anybody in procurement subcommittee, did we?
That didn't come up in the subcommittee when it was discussed.
Madam Chair, you like this bill? You like this bill, Senator Benson? Came out of your subcommittee. It's okay? An enthusiastic, it's okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Move favorable.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Senator Benson. What's next?
Senate Bill 196, this is another procurement bill. This is a departmental from MDOT. The bill clarifies existing law that only fees due to the state that are being charged for the procurement services are to go to the state operations fund. They utilize a service called BidX, which is has a subscription factor that goes to that provider. And so the law is just clarifying that the only requirements for remittance to the state fund are amounts due to the state and not to the subscriber. It's
just part of their fees?
It's clarifying that only the state fees due to the state are going to the state fund, where current law it's a little confusing about whether the subscription fee being paid to the provider is supposed to go to the state or not. So MDOT's proposed this to make it clear what fees are going where, and this will allow them to continue using this platform, which has additional features than eMaryland Marketplace.
You like this one, Madam Chair? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's it. All right. So let's do this 330 and 502 together. Dueling bills.
Alrighty. So both of the bills deal with the same tax credit, which is the authorizing existing tax credit for fallen law enforcement officers that counties can choose to do. It's been in law and has been through many iterations. I'll start with the easy bill, which is Senate Bill 502. That one adds judicial officers to the eligibility of the credit. And has a 2-year retroactivity clause.
Right. That's to accommodate, I believe, the family of the judge, unfortunately, was lost. Okay. And how is this different than the other one?
So the other one does multiple things.
And these are both authorizing, right, for the counties?
Correct. They're both modifying the same program.
Okay.
which is authorizing. So
Okay.
the other one, quick version, is Senate Bill 330 is identical to the bill that passed unanimously last year. This one deals with a couple of things. First of all, right now, the death of an individual had to have been in the course of employment. This bill would allow the credit for a death regardless of the cause. It expands the value of the credit for a subsequent home, and then it removes a restriction on the number of years after the death that a subsequent dwelling, I don't mean they have two houses, but a subsequent dwelling was acquired.
So can the county still make the determination of whether or not the death, whether they provide it, whether the death is in service or not?
So the county, let's see, yes, on the cause of death, there are provisions in the bill that allows the local to opt into that expansion. Locals can also opt into the no longer having a restriction on the number of years for a subsequent house. The provisions about the portability value of the credit are not incorporated into the provisions that would allow the locals to choose whether to do that one or not. So 2 would be opt-in, 1 is not opt-in.
Questions on either of these bills? On 502, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do you want to say something now that you got your bill passed? Okay.
I'd like to sign on to 330 with Senator Jackson.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, does anybody want to be on both or either?
I'll be on both.
Who wants to be on both? Hands up. Everybody.
Everybody, Senator Jensen was not here. Okay.
Senator
Bailey, sorry.
And Jennings.
And Jennings.
And Jennings, got it.
Okay, so we can ask them.
Okay.
All right, so the first, we passed 502 as amended with everybody on it, and now all's in favor of 330 with everybody on it. Aye. Opposed?
Yep.
Okay.
I guess
Very good.
That's also favorable with amendment for sponsors.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, 344.
Senate Bill 344. This has come up with you all before. Before it went to the floor, though, there was some clarifying that was brought to my attention, and so you have a new reprint in front of you. Now, this is the one that deals with the optional local property tax credit for retail stations that are put to a different use. And originally, the phrasing read as though it was a state mandate to reimburse for 50%. The amendment before you now is basically striking a shall and turning it into a may to make it crystal clear that the intent is not a mandate, but authorizing for the state to reimburse up to 50%.
Senator Corbin?
Similar question in the last bill. This is authorizing for the counties also, is that correct? Like
Correct.
it's just enabling legislation, and then so if the counties agree to do this, they have to be aware that they may be on the hook for the whole 100% because there's no guarantee that the state's going to pay for the 50, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor is amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Last one. What's that?
It
Oh,
was Jennings the last time.
was it?
You assigned it to Jennings the last go-round.
Yeah, we'll leave it to Jennings. Why not? 538.
All right, Senate Bill 358.
358.
It requires, this one is a mandate. It requires the governor to include $450,000 for the deaf and cultural digital library. That would be starting, well, in fiscal 26, but that's an ineffective mandate, so technically fiscal 2027. And then the bill would also then require the library to submit an annual operating budget to the state library agency every year.
Madam Senator, was this bill before us last year?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, it was already existed in law, right?
Yeah, so this program started in 2014, but it hasn't had a
I know
mandate.
we've heard this bill before. I was just wondering, why is it so difficult?
There's been a couple
To get
other
it
library,
passed.
there's been 2 or 3 other library bills that you've heard already. This is a third one.
I can't, I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is a different library bill. You've heard a couple other library bills already this year. I don't know if that's striking familiarity, but this particular deaf culture digital library has not been heard in prior years.
So it had nothing to do with the fiscal note?
What's that?
Had nothing to do with the fiscal note?
Yeah.
That
So,
was
so
offered
this
a
is,
couple
this
years
this is
ago.
continuing.
Just seems to me that
They've
this
been getting
bill
money.
They've
has
been
had some
getting
difficult moments. and
Yeah,
just
Senator,
Trying to figure out why it's so difficult.
it hasn't been difficult. We've been funding this.
Right.
Correct.
We've been funding this. I think it just came to a sunset of some sort, is that right?
No, it actually has never had a mandate, but it has been funded in the budget.
It's already been funded in the budget.
Yeah, and in fact, the fiscal '26 budget includes $401,000 for this library. This would just then mandate $450,000 in perpetuity. Because it's not mandated, the funding could go away.
Okay, thank you.
Senator?
I have nothing against this. I guess I'm, what is our policy on things like this?
Look, I mean, I think generally, no. But then I think the best way I can describe it, from my perspective, is if it is something that helps maybe a vulnerable part of the community in some way, shape, or form. And that would be one where I would be willing to go with the mandate. And if it doesn't fly, I mean, I'm still willing to, we'll come back and we can change that too. So but that would be my general policy. I mean, obviously, look, I had that bill earlier, and that deals with vulnerable, but that was way out of the price range, right? To do something as big as that. So I guess it's sort of, it's, you know, we're here trying to make judgments, and that's about the best I can describe it. Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Senator King. We are done. Thank you all very much. That was from today, Senator Zucker's bill.
Senate Bill 603. The file's in my office, but I believe it was definitely authorizing. It was not a mandate. I think it was $350,000 for this particular program at College Park. The bill also kind of listed the various things that money could be spent on to support the program.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we be a sponsor? You could be a sponsor too.
Sure.
I'm a Terp. Oh, I am. That's right, I am. I forgot about that.
You already on? Everybody?
Is everybody on, Ben? Senator Jackson? Everybody's in.
There we go.
Woo-hoo! All right.
No problem with the sponsor.
All right. Thank you all very much. See you.